We are now broadcasting, so go ahead, Ron.
Welcome to the Finance and Audit Committee's July 15th Advisory Body Meeting. This is a teleconference meeting with advisory body members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. So now we would have roll call, but I'd like, if Theo, could you take 30 seconds and introduce yourself to us, because I don't think we know you.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Theo Kate. I'm retired, but I spent my whole life in finance. I started my career with Pricewaterhouse, then I moved to a large US computer company and had several executive functions. And basically for the last 4 or 5 years, I am retired. But I continue to be involved with financial related activities. Now, I'm glad to get involved with Menlo Park. I have lived here for the last 27 years. Before that, I have lived in the UK, in Portugal, and in Brazil. Is that enough of a background?
Very good. So you know Winston Churchill?
Surely.
Never mind. So let's see. I guess I'll take roll. I guess that's Drew Combs. I see you here. Theo, you're here. Sean, you're here. Ray, you here? There's no picture. Is Ray here? Okay,
I am here, Ron, but there's not going to be a picture. I have a touch of something stomach-wise today, and I'm going to stay off camera.
Oh, take care of yourself. And Roger, you're here, and I'm here, and let's see, Brian.
Present.
Right, okay. And then staff members, who's here? Dan, you're here. Anyone else? Nita? Anyone else?
Here.
So we also have Neetu Sawan. She is our Deputy City Clerk. She is going to be helping us with the logistics of the meeting today.
Okay.
She may drop off before the end if we handle it, though.
Well, careful how you do that. So I presume there's no public here that wants to make a statement. Are there? No?
So there might be. We can go over the instructions to the members of the public as well as the members of the Finance and Audit Committee. This would probably be a good time to do that. And then there will be, of course, public comment available both at the beginning of the meeting and for each of the agenda items. Okay,
all right. I can give the instructions, but I thought I'd see if anybody wants to make a comment before we. So under public comment, the public may address the advisory body on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the advisory body once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The advisory body cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the advisory body cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Mr. Jacobson, do we have any public comment?
Okay, so at this time, members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, as the Vice Chair has called for public comment, please engage the raised hand feature over on the right. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide public comments to the Finance and Audit Committee. If you would like to make a public comment but do not have the ability to speak, that can also be added in the chat feature. So at this time, are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment under public comment?
I guess we'll go now to regular business. I don't hear anybody.
So let me just verify. Neetu, can you verify that there are no hands raised? I don't see any. I just want to make sure that I'm not looking for the wrong thing.
That is correct, and I don't see any hand raise from attendees.
Okay, so thank you, Ron, and I return it to you.
Okay, under regular business, the Finance and Audit Committee considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require Finance and Audit Committee approval. So the first item of business is selection of a committee chair and vice chair. Dan, you will introduce the item.
Thank you, Ron. So this is typical for for an annual cycle that the Finance and Audit Committee selects a chair and a vice chair. There is no staff report for this item. So it is, we've handled this in a typically reasonably informal way. Members are free to make recommendations for the chair and then vote on it. So it will be handled in a typical motion and second and then vote. And then after the selection of the chair, we'll handle selection of the vice chair. And at that point, transfer the meeting to the new chair to run. So any questions for me at this point?
Okay. Then I guess we, before we have the nominations for chair, I would like to suggest, I've done it once, and so I prefer if someone else took that role. You get maybe a different perspective when you have different people running things. So with that having been said, we'll open up for nominations for chair. Are there any nominations?
I am willing to nominate either Sean or Roger. If there's a desire by either one of them to be chair. I don't know if this was a discussion at an earlier meeting, but certainly willing to nominate one of them.
I would like to take myself out of consideration for chair. Thank you though for the vote of confidence, Drew. I should explain that I'm mainly doing that because I just feel very disconnected from what's been going on the finance side. Not saying that's anyone's fault except my own, but pleading that with the pandemic and with the lack of any intervening meetings, it's just been a little difficult.
So is there anyone that is, say, volunteering or at this point?
Well, then I would default to Roger, but Roger, let me know if you're.
Well, I'd be willing to do that unless somebody else really wants the job. I kind of expected Ron would be the chair again, but it sounds like he doesn't want to be chair again. And Sean, I'll just say that I've kind of got the same experience as you. The thing is, it really takes years to understand this committee. You know, and I think what you're probably experiencing now is just that it's a steep learning curve. You know, it just takes a while to, you know, to figure it out. So don't feel bad about that.
Well, I agree with you that it takes a while to learn the ins and outs of the committee, but I just think that this past 5 or 6 months has really put a spanner in the works, or a monkey wrench.
No, I love that spanner stuff. I mean, I'll do it again if you want me to. My frustration is I don't think we're getting much done. And so we're spending a lot of time and not getting much accomplished. That's my frustration. And I don't know how to fix that. For example, on the agenda tonight is review of the finance guidelines. That's set by law. So I don't know why we really need to look at it, although we do and approve it. Then the next biggest thing is to review the audit. And to me, the input there is all done. Everything's done. Somebody's reporting on what happened. So, I mean, I would like to be in a position where we have some input before things get done. So, as an example, the city of Los Gatos has an item on the ballot in November where the Finance and Audit Committee was frustrated in their lack of achievement, if I can put it that way. And so on the ballot is an item that forces the or not forces, that's a bad way to put it, but the Finance and Audit Committee reviews the budget before it's presented to City Council with their recommendations for the city council to review. And I think that's where we can have some input is, you know, before getting some input before things happen. And our input would be apolitical rather than are we trying to please the labor unions or somebody else? So that we come at it as citizens. So that's I hope that makes sense. But that's my frustration. So I don't know, Drew. How do you feel, Drew or Ray? How do you feel about the impact that the Finance and Audit Committee has on council decisions and information you get? Is it helpful?
Yeah, I think it is, Ron. And I think that right now, with respect to what's in front of you tonight, it's remembered just to that what's in front of you tonight is in context of a pandemic that's been taking place for 4 to 5 months and the committee not meeting. So I think that, I think there's been a lot of work done over the last year and a half to really try to get the to get projects moving that the Finance and Audit Committee cared about and get everyone on the same page. And unfortunately, right around the time that the pandemic kicked in and the committee was paused, as they all were, things were, I thought, really clicking well. So I think it's important to remember that in context in terms of what you're looking at the agenda tonight. But I think that the Finance and Audit Committee's input is very helpful to the City Council. I think we've expressed that when committee members have met with us when we've sought and when the committee members we've taken the advice of that committee, sought more advice, and sent things back to the committee for advice. So, you know, I would just encourage it to remember in context that right now things are not business as usual at City Hall. We just went through a $14 million deficit cutting, and staff is dispersed to a great extent, and we are doing we're all doing our darndest to adjust to what the new reality is. But I think that there is, in good faith, a very much an effort to try to make the committee as productive as possible and take its input, and that it's valued. And I think that's both from a council level and professional staff level.
And just as this is Brian Westcott, I would think too that the chair and the vice chair can also push, you know, open up the agenda, not the agenda tonight, but the purpose of the committee, and I would assume can add to that.
So the Finance and Audit Committee is governed by the charter that the City Council sets out. The Finance and Audit Committee has made in the past recommendations to adjust that.
Sure.
So there is certainly the ability for the chair and the vice chair to set the agenda within the purview of the charter that the City Council sets out. And one of the items on the agenda tonight is to take a look at the work plan and recommend that to City Council for approval. So certainly there is some latitude to adjust the direction of the Finance and Audit Committee at the chair and vice chair level. Not to say that there isn't that opportunity for all members. So.
Right.
Okay, where do we go from here?
So, this is Brian Westcott. I'm willing to nominate for vice chair if, I know that's ahead of the game, but if someone was willing to take on the chair, and if not, I guess. So is Roger, are you open to being chair?
I am, but I feel like it's up to Ron. I mean, I'll do it if Ron won't. Let me put it that way. By the way, remind me what the term of this is.
Well, I'm finished in April. I'm at my 4 years in April. So what might make sense to me is if I was chair until April, but we had somebody who was vice chair who I could work with and set some of these tasks up that we think would be helpful to the council, who would willing to follow in those footsteps.
I like that idea. I'd be happy to be vice chair. And I understand what you're saying, Ron, and I think there actually is a solution to that. I think that we could, as a committee, interact with city staff ahead of these meetings, and maybe, I mean, this is scripted pretty well, but we could maybe set things up in a way that's a little more acceptable to you.
Yeah, well, we have gotten, in my view, a lot of pushback from city staff who is no longer there. So that, so I mean, Dan is one of the better ones we've had to work with.
Who is no longer there?
I don't, you're not with Dan, I don't need to tell me, but so if everybody's agreed, I'd be happy to continue, or not to continue, to step up again if Roger then was the vice chair and we could work together on this. Would that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Sounds good.
Drew, you're kind of fidgety. You're going to be.
It's because my kid is crying. I'm trying to shake him. That's why I'm fidgety.
Okay, then do we have two nominations? Somebody wants to nominate.
So just so that I have the notes correctly, I will need someone to do a nomination and a second for each of those positions. And then we can,
Okay.
If the committee is fully in agreement, we can do it by acclamation, or we can do a roll call vote.
I would like to nominate Roger Royce as chairman of the committee.
No, I think Roger's going to be vice chair, right?
Right.
And Ron's,
Oh, I'm
Ron's
sorry.
Brian Westcott will nominate Ron Shepherd for the chairman of the committee.
My bad.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now we need a nomination for vice chair. I nominate Roger.
I'll second
Is there a
that. Brian Westcott will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much, I think. That's for sure. I guess the next item on the agenda is recommend the city council approve the city's investment policy. Dan, are there any changes in that from last year?
There are no substantive changes in the policy from last year. I will remind the Finance and Audit Committee that there were a number of changes that were made last year that were recommended to City Council and then approved. They were tweaks that were really regarding ambiguous sections, such as the requirement to dispose of positions depending on the rating change, and that was removed. So there have been no changes to what's in front of the council or the committee today, but that is not to say that such changes could not be recommended to council. The only change is really the formatting, just to bring it more in line with the city's branding standards.
Is there, I guess we need a motion to approve the recommended investment policy and the second, and then we can discuss it. Is that correct?
So preferably the discussion would happen ahead of time in case there are any recommended changes.
Any items to discuss? Any recommended changes? I know, Sean, you gave this the real once over last year.
Yeah,
What are the changes?
Yeah, I have nothing further on it.
Okay. Hearing no recommended changes, can I ask for a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
I will second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The next item is Dan, the update on the budget and transparency portal, OpenGov. And then when you do that, I should have asked you before, could you also comment on this program we were supposed to get, or we were getting, on the pension, adjusting investment returns and all that, to see what that does to the unfunded liability?
Sure, that might be better handled under director's report, but we can absolutely discuss that.
Right. Okay, let's do it under that. So update on budget and transparency portal through open.gov. You have the floor.
All right, thank you, Ron. Just a moment. We do have a comment from a member of the public. However, it is about a future agenda topic. So I will bring that back up when we get to that agenda topic. And at this time, I will mention that if any members of the public do desire to speak on any of these items as public comment, please do raise your hand, and we'll make sure that that gets included in the discussion for the Finance and Audit Committee. So at this time, what I'll do, there's no staff report for the update on OpenGov, since it is all published information that I'll show you, but I will share my screen, and we can, as soon as I find the correct one here. Okay, so hopefully the members of the Finance and Audit Committee have been able to view what the city has on OpenGov, the transparency platform and budget development platform. So this is where the budget proposals, the proposed budget and then the budget which was eventually adopted by City Council were developed and then displayed. So I do just want to walk through some of the how to use it, answer any questions that you have, and then I will have some additional things that I'll sort of share as we get through there. But I wanted to start with really sort of the splash page. So if you go to menlopark.opengov.com, this is the screen you'll see. It starts with a number of reports here on the side. You can see the very first one that it starts with is authorized full-time equivalent employees. And so just sort of walking through what's available here in this pane on the right, in each of the reports, you'll see some graphical representation of the information that's present. So in this case, it is a single year view of the distribution of employees throughout the city. In many of the reports, there's also going to be the raw data below hand. So while you will see that there are 25.75 full-time equivalent employees in community development, you could drop down here and actually see which position titles those are and their allocations across the various portions of the budget. Over on the left-hand side here, there are a number of what are called views, and these are sort of preset combinations of the report and filters that are what staff understands to be some of the most pressing questions that members of the community have. And so you can click through these and it will automatically reset the view. So in this one, the citywide view, it shows the full-time equivalents in fiscal year 2019-20 and 2020-21. So you can see the difference there, and then it also has it broken down by department, so you can even see where some of the differences by department are. And then clicking through them, it has departmental views. So these are side-by-side views for individual departments, and then it actually drills down to the division level. So in community development, there are 3 divisions. There's the building division, there's housing and economic development, and there's planning. And so all of these views are available here. So you can click through the various other ones there. And then the other major portion here, and we'll actually come back to this in a minute, but the other major portion is the stories. And so the other tab here up at the top will take you to stories. And so I've already clicked on the cover page and it opened a new tab, but I'll go there. And so this is basically the narrative portion of the budget. So the reports are really the raw data with just the context of prior years or other comparisons that you can see. And then the stories really cover the narrative. So it starts out as sort of a cover page, acknowledgements, and then offers the ability to jump to different sections of the budget. The city manager's transmittal letter is really the broad level overview of the budget that is presented to council. This is the same one that was presented to council on June 23rd, so we are working on updating it with what was actually adopted, adding some additional portions, but this is all available here. So if you were to click there, you'd get the transmittal letter. This is the narrative discussion of what this spending plan includes. And so you can read through here. Hopefully everybody has had some opportunity to do that. But one of the things that we were most excited about with OpenGov as a tool is the ability to embed some of those reports that we were just looking at into the stories themselves and have a dynamic view. So you can, mouse over police in this case, looking at the, this is again, the full-time equivalent staffing. So you could see how many regular staff members are assigned to the police department in fiscal year 2021 versus fiscal year 2019-20 and see the difference there. So moving back to the reports over here, we also have some of the more, the dollar reports. So if you click on the all funds revenue, you have all funds revenue, all funds expenditures, and then both of them together in the same graph. And then there are also subviews of those. And again, these are saved down here. So if you were interested in, for instance, what Public Works was looking like from a departmental revenue standpoint, it would show you just Public Works. You could drill down into each of these sections here, or you could look at various other slices of the city and other views. So those are all available here. These all do come from different sections, or they are all linked elsewhere in the budget. So if you read through the narrative, you will eventually come across these views. So for instance, if you're looking at transient occupancy tax being one of the major discussion points this year, given its the way COVID-19 has affected it, there is a discussion of transient occupancy tax, and it will show historicals as well as the budgeted amounts for 2021. So that said, are there any questions, anything that I can show to the committee now? There are also filters that are available, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we plan to make this accessible and make it so that the community can engage with it. But if there are any questions from community members right now, I'd love to answer those. Or I have another couple points that I will have to turn off screen sharing so that I can see my notes and make sure I don't forget anything.
Yeah, just quickly, I'm curious what kind of engagement you're getting. I mean, this is awesome. This looks, it's everything you promised it would be when we first heard about it. Does the community know about this, and are people using this? Are you able to track usage?
So we do have visitor analytics, so we do have a sense of how many people have engaged with it. However, that said, what we don't have is past usage analytics. So it's difficult to compare to how many people downloaded, for instance, the budget document from 2019-20, because we don't have those analytics. So I don't know from a comparative standpoint how many people, how many more or fewer people are engaging with it on this platform as compared to the previous media that the budget was presented in.
Okay. Are those analytics freely available, or is that something that only you know?
I don't believe that the analytics are shown. Let me see if I can find that. So the past 30 days is probably the best view of things. And I will say that the finance division city at large, I think, was really struggling to just get things in front of council for their consideration. And so, in an ideal world, there would have been much more opportunity to engage with the public and notify them of the availability of all this. And at the same time, we were really working on implementing it. And so as that's actually one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, was really our plan to make sure that going forward, that there is more community engagement, that there is more opportunity for the community to see this. So it looks like it says there are 802 unique visitors. I suspect that some of those are staff. However, it's sort of a guess based on how they reached these. And actually it looks like those at least those top 5 referrers, I don't think any of those are staff access. So, and so you can see right here, this is June 19th, 322 visits. That was probably some combination of staff furiously trying to finish it up, as well as it being published and available for the community to view ahead of the council's consideration on the 23rd. And you'll notice that there was another small spike leading up to the actual budget adoption. So this is certainly something that we will take a look at going forward. But again, unfortunately, we don't have anything in comparison to the previous years, but luckily we do now have at least a benchmark when we're looking at amendments to the budget going forward later on in the fiscal year and in future fiscal years.
Dan, how many modules are there to this and how many have been implemented? Give us an idea of what's left.
So from the budget standpoint, the only thing that we haven't implemented is the automatic budget document preparation tool. So the budget itself, the chart of accounts is all in here. It matches chart of accounts, or the chart of accounts that we use in our financial accounting software. The workforce development is all in here, so it does a very granular look at what the actual costs of the workforce are, the direct pay, the retirement, the employee cost share portion of it, the health benefits, workers' comp insurances. It has all of those on a very granular level. And then it has all of the various slices of the city's budget also in there. So, operating costs, contract services, repairs and maintenance, all of those are all in there, all fully available to be used. The only section that really has not been fully fleshed out, I think, is the balance sheet side of things. So we do intend to prepare fund balance reports. They are a little bit difficult just based on the financial accounting software we're using now. And we are still in kind of a learning mode with the 5-year CIP. So the budget that was developed and presented to council on the 23rd really was a single year operating budget. And so we are completing the rest of the CIP. So that will be available in the not too distant future as well. And then the last thing, and it's not related necessarily to the budget, but more on reporting, is the integration with Kayenta, which is our financial accounting software. And so that is in progress right now. What that will look like eventually is if we're looking at transient occupancy tax, for instance, this graph ends right now at the 2020-21 adopted budget. And this number is the actual adopted budget number, but what it doesn't have is actuals going forward. So those will be available at some point. So there will be, another section on here, which is year-to-date actuals. So we will have that real-time live information for all of these once we finish up the integration with Kayenta. And then the last thing really is just the automatic budget document preparation. And so that's really just to make it so that all of the stories that were collected into a single document will be available to the community going forward. So from the technical side of things, there's not a whole lot left to do. And let me stop my sharing here for just a second so I can pull up my notes. But from an actual presentation of what's typically available in a budget document, there are a number of things that we're still working on. So those include other funds descriptions. So if you look at the 2019-20 budget, that yellow section that started out with general fund or all funds discussion, then general fund, and then other funds, that we're still working on getting all of those carried over, as well as the spending plans for each of those individual funds. So the spending plan for the general fund is here. The spending plan for the internal service funds is there, but some of those really do require additional input from City Council as they work on the CIP. We'll also include some sort of retrospective reports, so 3-year historicals for both revenue and expenditures. Those will be included. Long-term debt will be included. Some fund balances will be included, and then appendices. So that's sort of what's left. And then, as I mentioned before, there really is that sort of engaging with the public and making sure that they have the opportunity to look at the budget, to make their comments to their elected officials who are going to take action on the budget. And so there's one module which is available, but which we haven't used, and that is called Open Town Hall. And so that's really what we what we plan to implement at some point later this summer, ideally before we send too many amendments back to the city council for their consideration. And so there was a member of the community who graciously offered their time to volunteer with finance and really offer their perspective on how the community might view OpenGov as a portal. So we plan to incorporate not only that perspective, but also really try to solicit the perspective from the rest of the community of, what do they use the budget for? What things are they curious about? How can we communicate that better to them? And how can we make that information more available? So that's sort of the capability is there. We haven't implemented it yet, but that is in the plan for what we are working toward for the budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, anything else you want to add, Dan, or is that?
I think that is everything in terms of OpenGov, unless there are any questions about it. So we can certainly return to this. I will definitely, if any Finance and Audit Committee members have any questions about how to operate OpenGov, or as you have the opportunity to dig through it, to comb through it, and have questions about it, please reach out to me. Happy to answer them. I'm sure you will have a different perspective than I do, just because this is me seeing the same thing day in and day out for months is probably not the same as your perspective of, what about whatever your question is. And I'd like to hear those questions because they're helpful, because even if I didn't have that question, I'll bet somebody else does, and answering it is part of really the role of city government. So please do reach out. Happy to have offline conversations as you have the chance to dig into it deeper.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from anybody? So then I guess we'll move to F4, which is the discussion of the work plan and recommend approval to the council. I guess when does the council want to look at this? When do they usually approve it? Well, I guess my question, how much time do we have to work on this before we present it to the council? Because I think we need more time to get our thoughts together.
So it is for other advisory bodies typically an annual review. I don't know that the Finance and Audit Committee has necessarily, I think that there was a time period where it wasn't quite as structured that way. But that said, I don't think that there is a due date that the council has asked for plans for their review. My feeling, and I would really defer to the city council members who are here, is that they would probably prefer to see a plan that has been mulled over rather than one which hasn't had the time to consider it.
Okay. So maybe we can just discuss each of these items and see where we are with some of the subcommittees, and then we can maybe Roger and I can get together and look at this and maybe come back with some sort of recommendation.
So it looks like I actually spoke too soon. It does actually look like these should go to council in August. So now that said, they could potentially be amended if there were changes in information down the road.
You mean August of 2020?
Yes.
No, we're not going to do it. It won't happen. Does anybody disagree with me?
Well, when in August is it due? We could have a special meeting.
So there are, I believe, I would actually have to check the city council's meeting schedule. I'm not certain. There may be only one meeting, or that may actually be the recess month. Oh, no, it looks like there are 2 meetings in August.
So when would the second meeting be?
Looks like August 25th.
Well, we could fit in a meeting between now and then to review it.
Hmm? Yeah,
Ron, are you appointing us to a subcommittee to work on this before August 25th? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, yeah, that's what I was, well, I was suggesting that you and I would be a subcommittee to go through this and make our recommendations, and then have a meeting with everyone to present our thoughts and get their thoughts, and then put a plan together. But yeah, that's not going to be done in 4 weeks.
But why can't it be? That in light of what we started the meeting saying that, we want this committee to be more responsive.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think it can be done.
All right. So let's work backwards. So if we have to make a report on the 25th of August, when can we meet before that to finalize a plan, if you will?
Does
we
this
need
have to be does this have to be a meeting of the finance committee with all the bells and whistles?
So the recommended work plan does need to be approved by the Finance and Audit Committee for consideration by the City Council.
Right. So we could have a working meeting like the second week in August, sometime the 10th through the week of the 10th. And just on this topic, and potentially have the chair set up their recommendation, and then we could go through it, and review it and approve it and send it to the council.
Roger, how you feel about that?
Yeah, we can do that. We can try. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could try, and then, as Dan said, we can amend it, but.
So we'd need to meet like around August. Well, this thing has to be done. If the meeting's on the 25th, this has to be done a week ahead of time, right, for inclusion in the package?
So it would really need to be done. So if there were a special meeting of the Finance and Audit Committee the week of August 10th, that would meet the deadline, but it couldn't be after that. There wouldn't be enough time to turn it around and prepare it and get it included in the packet.
I mean, I'll defer to the chair and the vice chair, but.
Let's try.
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay. So we'll meet, what's the Wednesday closest to August 10th?
Well, want to meet on the 12th?
August 5th is the Wednesday before, and the 12th is the Wednesday after the 10th.
Can we do the 12th? Dan?
If it is approved by the Finance and Audit Committee on the 12th, that would work.
Okay. All right. Why don't we call for a special meeting on the 12th, just to discuss this item. Looks like, Rod, you and I are going to have lunch.
All right.
6 feet apart. But
okay.
So, okay. So does anybody have any specific items they want to discuss that is here now, or are there specific items that you want Roger and I to consider when we're putting this together?
Terrific.
Well, Ron, you and I probably should talk about the unfunded pension liability, but I'm not clear at the moment whether we have access to the information that we need to move that forward.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, that would, how's that program? Well, you're going to report Dan later, but how's the implementation of that program that you have, the data processing to look at the numbers with different discount rates and so forth?
So it is complete. So that has been, they've taken all of the actuarial information for the city of Menlo Park, for the actual plans that the city has, put them into the software. So it is available for use at this point. And I actually did have a meeting with them a couple weeks ago. And they said that it would be reasonable to have members of the Finance and Audit Committee meet with one of their actuarial staff to answer questions in a more sort of one-on-one or 2 to 3-on-1 in that case discussion.
Right.
So that is available. It has been implemented. We have not had the staff has not had the capacity to use it to a great deal up until this point, just because of competing priorities. But it is ready for use.
So Dan, can we get access to that?
So I think the next step would be to develop a list of questions and then set up some time for you both for the subcommittee, whoever's on that subcommittee, to speak to the actuarial staff of the company.
Well, wouldn't it make?
Well, is it available for us to kind of play around with it?
I need to check with them. I'm not certain that it is. We can certainly, if you have some conditions that you would like us to test, I can certainly connect with them and make sure that we can try that out. But I don't know that it is available outside for other use.
Yeah. Well, I'm not
okay,
sure we can come up with the questions if we don't know what they've put in there.
So their baseline uses all of the assumptions that CalPERS uses, but any of those assumptions can be changed. So that's why I would recommend starting with a discussion with the actuary to see, I suppose, how closely those actuarial assumptions match what you would like to test.
Well, Ron, I think we can go back and dust off the questions that you and I came up with a number of months ago.
Yeah. I think because the questions are still the same, the answers are going to be a lot different with the pandemic and the stock market. And I read a horrible article that 10% of commercial property is owned by pension funds. I don't know how much CalPERS owns, but anyway. So yeah, okay. So you and I can get together on that, John. And okay. Then the other, the capital improvement program, that was, have you guys had a chance to meet on that?
And this is Brian Westcott. I believe I'm on that.
Yeah.
So no, we haven't met, but we should take an action item to look at that before and
okay.
get you. So that I'll put that down as a task. Capital improvement.
And then I've got my favorite topic: sell the water department.
Hey, by the way, Ron, keep back up just a second. So in the capital improvement plan, if you get a chance, I don't know if we're going to talk about it tonight, but you might look at the things Sudi and I put together for the next time we meet. It's a subcommittee report.
Yeah, no, that was pretty impressive. I remember that.
So I do have that available and can share it. If it's, I had planned to include it under the committee member reports, but can certainly include it now if that would be preferred.
At some point before the next meeting, so if people have comments, objections, or whatever, we can put it out there.
So let me see if I can sum this up if we're ready to. So the Finance and Audit Committee will meet August 12th. Roger and I will meet before that to put sort of a proposed game plan together. Sean and I will meet to look at the pension issue. And then, Dan, if you can send out that capital improvement plan that that Sooty and Roger put, we could review that. And I don't know if there's anything else we need to go through on here. I'm not sure. Roger and I can just look at those. I don't think.
One item I was interested in, and I know there was talk, was is there a benchmarking function that we would play against other communities' budgets?
Well, maybe that would be an item, a project item.
Yeah, I would like to look into that some. I think it would be a positive because if nothing else, it's and Dan, I don't know if there's a way to incorporate that into this program to see how to show how we compare potentially.
So the platform is extremely flexible in terms of representing data, so that there are some things that are very much built in. The revenues and expenditures are pretty straightforward, but things like the workload indicators that are included in there are things like, for finance, one of them would be how many business license renewals were processed, which is, it's structured data, but it's not standardized. And so to the extent that data can be structured in that way, there can be reports that are set up that would show that.
But either way, that's something to consider. I'll just throw that out for when we reconvene. But the other thing, Dan, if you would send out, what you would consider good benchmark, good budgets, good cities that you would look at as a benchmark for us to review, that would be helpful.
So just as a clarification, are we talking the communication that they do, or the particular
well, just
way that they allocate funds?
It might be communication, but it's also their actual budgets. Cities you consider as comparables that we would be useful to look at.
Okay, I can take a look at that. I don't
like
know that I have that.
Palo Alto, Redwood City, and then, obviously there's the local ones that would make sense, but any others, I just, if you have a feeling for some.
Sure, I can do that.
That'd be great.
So just to be clear, what we're talking about here is amending this document, the Finance and Audit Committee work plan, to be the 2020 to 2021 plan, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So really, I mean, the main thrust here is to make sure that we've got the right items down here, not that we've necessarily solved each of them.
Absolutely, though, I mean, as long as some progress can be made within that year.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ray gave us some really good advice, maybe a year ago, and he said, pick out 2 or 3 items that you're really interested in working in and get us to get behind you, us being the council. And then when you've finished one of them, we'll add another one. So his advice was, let's keep the list shorter rather than longer and make sure we make really good progress on the ones that are on the list. So Ray, I don't know if you've changed your mind on that, but it struck me that we have just too many things on the list, and so our energies are somewhat scattered because of that. So I would, 2 or 3 items is what, and I guess we have 3, but they're broken down into A, B, C, D. But
Yeah, I've always been a proponent of trying to keep it as focused as possible. So just so that success builds upon success. A bunch of projects going at once can linger.
yeah, okay. Okay, well, anything else on this topic that anybody has, or I think we sort of have our marching orders. Everybody okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So then we'll go to I guess reports now, the director's report.
So I will be sitting in for Nick Pigueros. With Linka's departure, I don't know whether everybody is aware of that, but our previous administrative services director, Linka Diaz, took an opportunity in another jurisdiction nearby. She was promoted to assistant city manager there. And so we were left without an administrative services director, and that was the beginning of April. Right during the pandemic time, and then given the budgetary constraints, that position was not filled during the budget process. So Nick Pigueros, the city's assistant city manager, is also serving as yet another hat as the administrative services director. So he is the department head for administrative services. You might also notice in the budget that it has been combined with general administration. This was really to align it more with the comprehensive annual financial report, the CAFR. Because that's how the internal administrative functions of the city are shown in that document. So there is some comparability there, but it also happens to align with that sort of structural change that happened in this budget cycle. So just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. In terms of what finance is working on now, the year-end close process has started with the fiscal year beginning July 1st. That means closing out the fiscal year that ended on June 30th. That is a several month-long process. We expect our audit field work to begin in September. That will be probably, field work in the current conditions is kind of a strange term. We had our interim audit that was fully remote, so that was absolutely a new experience, and we expect that the field work in September will also be fully remotely or possibly a single day on site by the auditors. The CAFR was published, I think it might have actually been on my birthday last year. So the end of November, beginning of December, we still intend to get the CAFR published in time for the council to take it at their last business meeting of the year. So that is still the intention there. And of course, the Finance and Audit Committee has a role interfacing with the auditors during that process. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but do just want to make sure that the Finance and Audit Committee is aware that the capital improvement plan will go to council for consideration on July 28th. So that is the remaining portion of the budget that was not available to be considered on June 23rd. Just understanding that the decisions that the council had to make this year were so much, they were so different than they had been in prior years, and the timing of it made it just extraordinarily difficult for everyone involved, for the community, for staff, for council. And so that was not included at that point, but they will determine how that capital improvement plan looks and which projects should be funded and go forward at that point. And then just the last piece was the GovInvest software, that is the pension software, has been implemented. So as I mentioned, we haven't had the opportunity to work on it too much at this point, though it does at least have the capability of doing that. So as we have that capacity going forward, we will bring that back to the Finance and Audit Committee for consideration on primarily how to share that topic, given that it is an extraordinarily complex one, and one that people are typically not at all familiar with. So really will try to lean on the Finance and Audit Committee for how to make that approachable for the community members and for the council at large. And that's all I had, Ron, unless there are other questions that I should address.
Any questions for the director? Okay.
Not from me.
And anything that hasn't been discussed that you'd like on a future agenda?
So Ron, I will make the comment that there was actually a public comment for this one. We have Jim Lewis who wanted to make a public comment. Jim, if you are available with audio, would you raise your hand, and then I can allow you to address the Finance and Audit Committee? Okay, he says that audio is not available, so I'll go ahead and read out what he put in the chat. So he says, regarding agenda item G2, can the Finance and Audit Committee add to their future agenda topic the sale of Willow Road at Ivy Avenue, land to the Menlo Park Fire Protection District? This would bring in badly needed funds to cover urgent and essential services. Thank you. And also, can a refund be made of the approximately $600 per year for a downtown parking permit in as much as enforcement was suspended in mid-March? This may affect approximately 1,500 vehicle owners at $600 a person for a $900,000 refund. Thank you. So thank you, Jim, for your public comment.
Which agenda will we put this on if we want to put it on? Does anyone want to put either one of those items on the agenda? Okay, I don't hear anybody does. So I guess let's make a note. Maybe they'll come back later.
Well, let me ask, can we even do that? I mean, is this within our mandate?
So council has already provided direction to staff regarding the Willow and Ivy property. That was something that they did consider. And then to your question about whether this is within the purview of the Finance and Audit Committee, I don't know how it would directly align with what council has charged the Finance and Audit Committee with. It seems more operational in nature rather than focusing on the sort of communication, which I think is sort of the largely the overarching theme, and then focus on some very specific topics such as the investment policy and the annual audit.
I don't think it fits, to tell you the truth.
Which one? Both of them?
Both.
Yeah, I mean, the one about the parking permits, I think that needs to go back to whoever runs that particular program and discussion maybe with council.
I mean, I paid fees to be in the choir, and that was canceled a month into it, and I never got a refund. I mean, there's a lot of that went on.
Yeah, I don't know. We want to start putting all of those, on our work plan.
Yeah. Yeah, you want me to sing or something? I don't know. Anyway, so okay, thanks, Jim. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. But I think it's not within our purview to review that. Okay, anything?
So we had discussed the memo a little bit earlier. I can share that. It's several pages long, so it would take some time for community members to read currently, or I could just send it out afterward. I just wanted to verify that I have the correct direction on that while we're here.
What? I'm sorry. What memo?
The subcommittee memo. This is the one that Roger had mentioned before.
Oh yeah, I think you should send it out to everybody, if you don't mind.
I think people need a chance to read it.
Yeah. Okay. Any other items that, okay. Hearing none, I think the meeting will be adjourned. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you in about 5 weeks. Roger, I'm out of town for a week, so I'll get to you after that.
Yeah, shoot me an email. We'll set something up.
Okay.
I just did want to take a second and welcome Theo to the commission. I don't know if you all had an opportunity to be introduced to him, but we have a new commissioner with us.
Yeah, we did before, I think you,
Before I was on? Okay, great, wonderful. Sorry to miss that, and pleasure to hear all your voices again. So thank you.
Theo's probably wondering who all we are.
Yeah, that's probably would be a
Well,
good idea for everyone to
I can
introduce
say-
themselves.
secret.
I think I introduced myself. I have to say it's quite a learning curve. So I will just stay silent for a couple of these meetings before I can learn a little bit more about it.
That was my strategy too, and it took a lot of meetings before I felt like I could comment on anything.
Well, Theo, you're working with a bunch of foreigners here. I mean, I'm English. Sean was over there a lot in England, right, Sean? Did I get that right?
No, I'm English.
Oh, you're English
Okay.
as well. Oh,
Oh, yeah.
as they say.
Well, fortunately, we can all speak the same language.
Yes. Well, I don't know. Well, some speak American, some speak English. Never mind. Okay.
That's close
With that,
enough.
I'm flat. The meeting's adjourned.
All righty.
Thanks,
Thank you for all
everyone.
your work.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, guys.
Ruth,
Nice
everyone.
evening. Bye.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.